What if your worst morning led you straight into someone who would change your life forever? Not all collisions break things. Some build something you never saw coming. The city was just waking up when a scarlet sports car screeched to a sudden stop, barely missing a weathered bicycle. By a breath in the aftermath, a splash of coffee streaked across the windshield, briefly hiding the shocked face behind the wheel. A door slam. Out stepped August Wren, 34, untouchably composed, his tailored suit sharper than the morning air, known in boardrooms and business columns. He wasn't used to anything, not even traffic getting in his way. Across the crosswalk stood Isla Merrick, 28, paint on her cheeks, a broken thermos in hand, and fire in her eyes. Her overalls were stained with color, not carelessness, and her hair was piled into a chaotic bun that made her look like she belonged in a studio, not the street. "You almost ran me over," she snapped, breathless. "There's a red light for a reason. You know." August's expression barely flickered. He reached into his coat and pulled out a stack of bills like they were tissues. "This should cover your breakfast and your outfit," Isla blinked, stunned. "Do I look like I'm for sale to you?" "I was offering an apology," he said. But even he didn't sound convinced. "No," she crossed her arms. "You were offering convenience. I want accountability, not cash." A few early risers had stopped phones in hand, watching the odd standoff, a billionaire with a smudge of coffee on his windshield and an artist with a backbone made of steel. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" August asked, intrigued by her refusal to be impressed. Isla frowned. "Should I before?" He could answer. A sleek SUV rolled up. A polished assistant stepped out briskly. "Mr. Wren, the Synergy Group, meeting starts in 5. 1 minute, he said, waving her off. His gaze was still fixed on Isla. Then he surprised her again. "That's a vintage roadster," he said, nodding to her. "Bicycle. Custom frame." Her voice softened for the first time. "It was my grandfather's. He rebuilt it piece by piece." "I think I may have broken the chain," August said, looking down. "Let me give you a ride. I'd rather limp," she replied flatly. He didn't argue. Instead, he handed her a simple white card. "When you're ready to talk like a grown-up, call this number." Their fingers brushed, just for a second, but it was enough to make them both freeze. Mr. Wren, the assistant, urged. Yeah, he muttered, already turning away. Then he paused. "The coffee." "What was it?" She raised an eyebrow. "You nearly turned me into a pavement mural, and you're asking about my drink." He gave a half smile. "Humor me." "Ethiopian single origin, from a corner shop on Lark Street." He gave a nod. "Nice choice." And then he was gone, vanishing behind tinted glass and power, but Isla just stood there, soaked in caffeine and disbelief, clutching a business card with no logo, only a name, and somehow she knew this wasn't the last time she'd see him. "Solid choice, August," Wren said, as he slid into his Ferrari, a faint smirk on his lips. With a low growl of the engine, he was gone, leaving Isla Merrick in the middle of the street, soaked in espresso and confusion, her fingers curled around a thick embossed card. She glanced down. August. Wren CEO, Wren Holdings. In fine script, just below, a handwritten note. "Sorry about the bike and the light." She blinked. That hadn't been there before, unseen by either of them. Delilah Crane, August's executive assistant of 7 years, had watched the entire scene unfold. In all her time beside him, she'd never once seen him apologize, let alone in writing. Something about that woman, barefoot and paint-stained overalls, fiercely unshaken, had shifted the air. Across the city, fate was already tightening its grip. August's grandfather, the only family he had left, had taken a sharp turn for the worse. The old man's illness would soon set off a chain of decisions, ones that would lead August and Isla back into each other's lives, in ways neither of them could have imagined. 3 weeks later, Isla stood in the doorway of her shared art loft, staring for the fifth time that day at the eviction notice taped to the frame. It hadn't changed, though she kept hoping it might. 30 days. That's all they had left. I can't believe they sold it, groaned Mira. Her best friend and roommate, her hands still flecked with dried clay. This place is the last affordable artist space in Harbor City. I've called everyone. Isla sighed, sinking into the sunken armchair they'd found on the curb 2 years ago. No one's taking new tenants. Not for anything less than a fortune. The buzzer rang, sharp and unexpected. She dragged herself to the intercom Merrick studio. She answered her tone flat. A voice replied, smooth and unmistakable. Ms. Merrick August. Ren, we met recently when you christened my car with your coffee. Isla's heart leapt into her throat. She looked at Mira in alarm. How the hell does he know where I live? He's a billionaire, August replied, as if he'd heard the thought. Finding people is significantly easier than earning 10 zeros. Despite every instinct, screaming, no, she buzzed him in. Moments later, he stood in their studio, utterly out of place, against a backdrop of paint-splattered canvases and a couch held together with hope and duct tape. He wore what he probably thought of as casual, a dark gray cashmere pullover that likely cost more than their entire security deposit. You never called, he said, casually, his gaze landing on a painting of wild storm waves slamming into a lighthouse. You didn't strike me as someone who takes rejection well, Isla shot back, folding her arms. To her surprise, he laughed genuine and warm. Fair enough, then his eyes flicked to the eviction notice pinned above the sink. Trouble not yours, she said, quickly yanking it down. Actually, August, said, clearing his throat. It is? She froze. Excuse me? He exhaled. My company, Wren Development, purchased this building last month. All the color drained from her face. So, this is your fault. You're evicting artists now. How very Wall Street of you. I didn't know it was a creative co-op, he said, his voice measured. Not until this morning. It got flagged in a routine audit, so you came in person to kick us out. That's your solution. I came, he said more seriously, to offer you something else. The shift in his tone made her pause. Why? August's eyes darkened slightly. My grandfather's dying. The words fell like a stone in the room. I'm sorry, Isla said, instinctively softening. Don't be. He's not exactly a beloved man. He's outlasted 4 doctors and 2 wills out of sheer stubbornness. A faint bitterness undercut his words, laced with something more complicated, something she couldn't yet name. But he's also the majority shareholder of Wren Holdings, August said, rubbing the bridge of his nose like the words themselves were exhausting. Isla stared at him blankly. Okay. And what does that have to do with me? He started pacing at the floor of her tiny apartment, nearly tripping over a pile of paintbrushes. My grandfather, ever the puppeteer, has decided he won't pass down his shares unless I prove I've found true love before the year is up. From the corner, Mira let out a very unladylike snort. Are you serious? That's the plot of like 8 bad rom-coms and at least 3 soap operas. Believe me, August replied dryly. I'm painfully aware. Still not seeing the connection, Isla crossed her arms. Why are you telling me this? August stopped mid-step and looked at her, really looked at her, because I need someone to pose as my girlfriend, eventually my fiancée. Someone who doesn't come from money, who's not dazzled by private jets or yachts. Someone grounded, someone my grandfather might actually believe. Her jaw dropped. You want me to pretend to be in love with you? In return, he continued smoothly, like he was negotiating a merger, you'll live in the guest house on my estate, rent-free, all expenses covered. I'll also fund the creation of a new artist collective, downtown. Not just for you, for all your friends who'll be displaced when this building gets torn down. He paused. And when the year is up, I'll transfer $2 million to your name. For a moment, Isla and Mira just stared at him, like he'd grown a second head. You're completely unhinged, Isla said finally. August's lips quirked. It's possible, but so is my grandfather. And I'm tired of the chessboard he's turned my life into. He took a breath. I don't have the luxury of time for real dating. And most of the women I meet see me as a paycheck, not a person. So what exactly would I be doing? Isla asked, wary, but curious. You'd come with me to social events. Visit my grandfather weekly. Learn enough about my company to appear genuinely invested. And his tone grew quieter. You'd pretend we're falling in love. It sounded almost sterile when he said it, like a signed contract instead of a life-altering proposal. Just to be clear, Isla added, her cheeks warming. There's no physical obligation. August's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Only what's needed to make it look believable. A hand held at the right moment. A kiss in front of a camera, but nothing beyond what you're comfortable with. Mira tugged Isla into the kitchen with urgency. Tell me you're not thinking about doing this, she whispered. We're 2 weeks away from living out of storage. Lockers, Isla whispered back. This wouldn't just save me. It could save everyone in the building. He's charming and clearly crazy, maybe Isla replied. But sometimes crazy changes everything. When they returned to the living room, August was studying one of Isla's smaller canvases, a golden sunrise, painted from the rooftop of their building. Did you know, he said, without turning, my grandfather painted once, before the boardrooms and press coverage, he wanted to be an artist. Isla blinked. I didn't know that. That's why I think he might see something familiar in you. Something he's forgotten. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. 1 year, no blurred lines. No, and you fund the co-op. Before I move, in August, turned to face her, extending his hand with calm assurance. We have a deal, Miss Merrick. As her fingers slid into his, neither of them realized just how quickly the line between pretense and something real would begin to disappear. Minutes later, she sat quietly in the back seat of his Bentley, staring wide-eyed as they passed through wrought-iron gates taller than her building. You didn't mention your house was... I don't know, visible from space, she muttered. August didn't even flinch. Welcome to Wrenwood. The driveway stretched on, endlessly curving through immaculate gardens that looked like they belonged in a palace brochure. This isn't a house, Isla murmured from the passenger seat. Her voice, half awe, half disbelief. August's hands, steady on the steering wheel, offered a small smile. It's called Wrenmore, built in 1897. My great-great-grandfather designed it to impress the future. The east wing was added in the 50s. She pressed her forehead gently against the cool glass, trying to ground herself. 1 week had passed since she'd shaken his hand and agreed to the strangest deal of her life. In that time, August had already delivered on his promises. He'd secured a new downtown space for displaced artists, and she had packed up the entirety of her life into 2 suitcases and a duffel. You're quiet, August said. Glancing over, Isla didn't look at him. Just debating all the decisions that led me here. He chuckled under his breath. Second thoughts, a dozen. At least, she admitted. This world, it's not mine. As they reached the grand entrance, a stately man in a tailored suit appeared, as if conjured from the bricks themselves. Welcome home, Mr. Wren, he said, bowing slightly before rounding the car to open Isla's door. And welcome, Miss Merrick. This is Alton, August explained. He runs the estate with frightening precision. Alton offered her a slight nod. Shall I send Miss Merrick's luggage to the east wing? No, August replied smoothly. The lake house, and let Mrs. Halberd know, will need her assistance preparing Miss Merrick for tomorrow evening's dinner. Alton didn't so much as blink. Very good, sir. Isla climbed out of the car, her worn leather backpack slung over one shoulder like armor. Okay, who's Mrs. Halberd? And what do you mean by prepare me? August smirked. Housekeeper. And by prepare I mean making sure you don't show up to dinner with my grandfather wearing paint-streaked overalls. I own clothes. Isla huffed. Sure, he said, amused. Just not the kind Charleston Wren would deem dinner appropriate. Before she could argue further, a woman stepped gracefully onto the front steps. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant bob, and her eyes held warmth behind her sharp poise. August. She greeted warmly. And this must be Miss Merrick. I'm Evelyn Halberd. Nice to meet you, Isla said immediately. Aware of her scuffed boots and travel-wrinkled jeans, Mrs. Halberd practically raised me. August added quietly, his tone softer than usual. She knows how to keep this place, and me running, well, someone has to keep your feet on the ground, Mrs. Halberd said, with gentle exasperation. Shall I take Miss Merrick to the lake house? I'll do it, August said. Before Isla could answer, both women looked surprised. Mrs. Halberd raised a brow, but simply nodded. I'll have tea sent down in an hour. They walked through winding garden paths, past ivy-covered arches and tucked-away courtyards. Eventually, the trees gave way to a clearing, and there it was. A 3-story guest house stood at the water's edge, its walls kissed by the golden late-afternoon sun, windows stretching open toward a silver lake. This is larger than the building I just left, Isla whispered. It has good light, August replied, unlocking the door, especially upstairs, north-facing windows, perfect for painting. She froze in the doorway. There's a studio, he hesitated. I had it converted yesterday. I figured you'd need the space. Isla turned to look at him, eyes wide. No one had ever anticipated her needs like that, not even close, and suddenly she wasn't just standing in a borrowed guest house on a billionaire's estate. She was standing at the edge of something she didn't understand and maybe didn't want to walk away from. I thought you might want to keep creating while you're here, August said, voice quieter than usual. Isla stood frozen in the middle of the sun-drenched room. Her gaze swept over the tall easels, the pristine paint, sets, the delicate brushes laid out like surgical tools. The north-facing windows bathed everything in silver light. A slow warmth unfolded in her chest, unexpected and a little disorienting. Thank you, she said, finally the words catching somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. They lingered in the doorway, unsure of what came next, until August cleared his throat. We should probably go over the plan for tomorrow. My grandfather expects us at 7 sharp. Anything I should know about him? She asked. He'll be watching us like a hawk. How we talk. How we sit. Hey, he'll measure the truth in our silences. Do we need a story? Isla asked. How we met. First kiss. Epic. Confession in the rain. August shrugged. The truth, minus the contract, is fine. Coffee near death. Incident, unexpected spark, whirlwind romance. Isla raised a brow. You think he'll believe? I fell for you after you nearly turned me into street art. August smirked. No, but he'll believe I fell for you. The cynical billionaire, captivated by the wild, fearless artist who couldn't care less about his bank balance. Her face flushed involuntarily, and she looked away. Anything else I should know? She asked, steering them back on track. He's sharp. Don't flatter him. He'll smell it from a mile away. And he has no patience for weakness. A shadow crossed August's face, subtle but telling. Why do I get the feeling this is more than just a test of our chemistry? Isla asked gently. He hesitated. My parents died in a car crash when I was 12. He raised me after that. His voice was flat, almost practiced, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. Isla wanted to say something, but the moment was broken by the buzz of his phone. He glanced at the screen. Crisis at the office. I have to go. Alton will bring your bags shortly. He paused at the threshold. Thank you, Isla, for being here. Once the door closed behind him, Isla exhaled and let the silence settle. The guest house was a masterpiece of quiet luxury. Art-lined walls, hand-woven rugs, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glassy lake. She wandered upstairs and stopped short. The studio, it was more beautiful than she'd imagined. A place made not just for painting, but for dreaming. On the windowsill sat a neatly wrapped package and a small card to replace what was lost. A view inside was a vintage thermos, identical to the one she'd lost under his Ferrari, and filled with the same Ethiopian roast. Her hand trembled slightly as she held it. She didn't want to admit how much that gesture moved her. Meanwhile, at the main house, August sat at his desk, distractedly scrolling through security footage from the lake house. He watched Isla unwrap the package, saw the way her lips curved into a rare, unguarded smile. Something shifted in his chest. Sharp, unfamiliar. "Problem, sir." Evelyn Halbert's voice broke through his thoughts as she placed a stack of papers beside him. "Not exactly a problem," August replied. "More like an unexpected variable. Those are often the best kind," she said with a knowing glance. "Oh, and your grandfather called," she added. "Lunch, not dinner," his words were, and I quote. "I want to see this girl in daylight," August groaned. Of course he does. What neither of them realized was that Charleston Wren had already hired private investigators. He wasn't fooled by sudden declarations of love. Back at the lake house, Isla stood in front of the mirror, dread blooming in her stomach. "No, absolutely not," she whispered. The emerald gown that Mrs. Halberd had laid out was breathtaking, silk that shimmered like water, a neckline that walked the line between graceful and bold, but it cost more than her first car. "I can't wear this," Isla said, stepping back, as if the dress might bite her. "Mr. Wren insisted," Mrs. Halberd said gently. "He's quite particular about appearances. And you, my dear, are about to be on display. This feels wrong," Isla murmured, eyeing her reflection. The gown shimmered with every breath she took. Deep, emerald silk, cinched perfectly at the waist, brushing her ankles like liquid light. It wasn't her, and yet. The woman in the mirror didn't look like a starving artist anymore. She looked like someone who might actually belong in August Wren's world. "If it helps," said Evelyn Halberd, gently, as she adjusted Isla's curls into a soft chignon. "In my 35 years working for the Wren family, I've never seen Mr. August bring a woman home to meet his grandfather." Isla blinked. "Not once. Not ever." Evelyn confirmed with a knowing glance. "He's had acquaintances, but no one he introduced as part of his personal life." Isla swallowed. Whatever this arrangement was, it clearly meant more than she thought. A firm knock at the door pulled them from the moment Evelyn opened it to reveal August dressed in a navy suit that looked as if it had been stitched onto him by angels. Isla's mouth went dry. He said nothing at first, just stared. "What?" she asked, nervous. "Is something wrong?" His voice was quieter than usual. "No, you look incredible." The unexpected softness in his tone threw her off balance. "Thanks. You don't look so terrible yourself." Evelyn made herself scarce, giving them a moment of privacy. August extended his arm. "Just a warning. My grandfather will try to break us. He'll ask about our history, your art, my company, our so-called love story. He'll be testing for cracks. So it's like a lie detector test. But with soup and fine china," Isla quipped. A rare smile tugged at his lips. "Exactly. Just follow my lead. And remember, I'm hopelessly in love with you." She batted her lashes dramatically. "Duly noted, madly, wildly, irrevocably in love." Got it before he could respond. Alton appeared. "The car's ready, sir. The drive to Charleston." Wren's estate was quieter than usual. Unlike the blend of contemporary and historic charm at the Wren Manor, the elder Wren's home was a monument to tradition. Red brick, white pillars, ivy climbing like secrets across the facade. The kind of place that hadn't changed since the 1800s and refused to. As they stepped out, August turned to her. "He values authenticity more than anything. If he thinks you're pretending this is over," Isla raised a brow. "But I am pretending. Yes." August hesitated. glancing at her, but the best lies borrow truth. She didn't have time to dissect that. The towering oak doors opened. A silent butler led them through a grand foyer into a conservatory soaked in sunlight. There in a wheelchair that did little to diminish his presence sat Charleston Wren. He was all sharp angles and sharper eyes, steel blue like August's, but colder, more practiced, a man who'd built an empire with a handshake and destroyed rivals with a glance. So, he said, without looking up from the glass of water in his hand, "This is the woman who supposedly tamed my grandfather," August said, voice formal. "This is Isla Marin. A pleasure, Mr. Wren," Isla said, stepping forward and offering her hand. Charleston didn't shake it. Instead, he took it, turning it over slowly. Painter's hands, he noted, calluses, stains, unrefined. "Not what I expected from August. I'm full of surprises," August replied, his hand sliding gently to the small of Isla's back. Charleston's eyes flicked toward the gesture. "So I see. Sit." They did. "Now," he said, his tone deceptively pleasant, "tell me, how did you meet?" As an army of silent staff served lunch with polished precision, Isla and August told their carefully curated story, their first chaotic encounter over coffee, minus the part where it was all a business arrangement. Isla found herself weaving details that hadn't been rehearsed. She mentioned the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled for real, how he remembered the exact roast of her coffee. Things that felt true, even if the context wasn't. "And what drew you to my grandson, Ms. Marin, Charleston?" Wren asked, his tone unflinchingly direct. Surely not the absence of financial comfort. Isla felt August go still beside her. "Honestly," she replied, eyes level with Charleston's, "his money nearly made me walk away." That earned her a raised brow. "I found him insufferably arrogant," she added, a hint of a smirk, softening her words. "But then I saw something else. Missa, a man who noticed the craftsmanship of an old bicycle, who wrote an actual apology for nearly running me down. That wasn't arrogance, that was humility, trying to hide itself." She glanced at August. He was already looking at her, his expression unreadably soft. "I got curious," she finished simply, "about that version of him." Something flickered across Charleston's face. Approval, perhaps, or something close to it. "And you?" August, the old man asked. "What convinced you this artist was worth bringing home?" August didn't even blink, her fearlessness. He leaned forward, slightly, his voice calmer than usual. "She stood in the middle of the street, drenched in coffee, and told me off, like I was anyone else. She didn't care about my name, my car, or the company I run. That doesn't happen. Not in my world." His words hit Isla harder than she expected. She had come prepared for performance. She hadn't expected this real admiration spoken aloud. Charleston leaned back, tapping his cane against the floor. Thoughtfully, "Ms. Marin, may I speak to my grandson in private?" "Of course," she said. Though her stomach twisted with unease, a butler escorted her to the adjoining room, where she stood by the door, catching murmured fragments of the conversation beyond Charleston's voice, sharp with suspicion, August's tone steady, but tinged with frustration. She couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. The air itself seemed to tense around them. Finally, August reappeared, face unreadable. "We're leaving," he said, hand at her elbow. "Already, but now, Isla." His voice left no room for debate. They were halfway down the gravel path when Charleston's voice called after them, "Miss Marin." They both turned. The elder Wren stood framed in the doorway, backlit by fading sunlight. "My grandson believes in this relationship," he said slowly. "I remain skeptical, but I'm not unwilling to reconsider." His eyes bored into hers. "Prove me wrong. The Wren Foundation Gala, next Saturday. All of New York society will be there, the perfect stage to showcase your—" "Bond will be there," August answered firmly, Speaking for them both, the car ride back to Wren Manor was silent tension, stretching tight between them. What did he say? Isla asked at last. He thinks I'm paying you, August replied without hesitation. He had you investigated. Isla's breath caught. He what? He knows you are about to lose your home, that your financial situation suddenly changed. August's jaw was set, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. He's putting the pieces together. But he doesn't have proof. What do we do now? She whispered. He turned to her briefly, eyes dark and resolute. We make them believe it. August's expression was stone. We'll need to adjust the terms of our arrangement, he said flatly. Isla looked at him wary. What kind of adjustment? No more separate living spaces. You're moving into the main house, he replied, eyes fixed on the road. Separate residences don't reflect well. Not anymore. She blinked, trying to process. Anything else? He hesitated. We'll need to act like a real couple, not just in public. Everywhere, grandfather has eyes in more places than you'd think. The silence that followed was heavy, neither one willing to address. What they both knew, whatever game they'd been playing, just became far more personal. Stop fidgeting. August whispered against Isla's ear, his breath brushing her skin like a dare. You look breathtaking. Easy for you to say, she muttered, trying to keep her posture steady. You probably wore a tux to kindergarten. They were standing at the grand entrance of the Alden Museum's annual gala, bathed in the golden glow of chandeliers and the harsh light of cameras. 5 days had passed since their tense lunch with Charleston Wren. 5 days since Isla had moved into the manor. 5 days of towing the line between obligation and something dangerously close to attraction. They'd set boundaries. Hand-holding was permitted, so were brief strategic kisses, light touches, all for show, all part of the performance. And yet somehow, none of it had felt like acting lately. Tonight Isla wore a silver gown that shimmered like moonlight tinged with icy blue, that brought out the brilliance in her eyes. August had commissioned it himself after she'd dismissed a dozen couture dresses with dry remarks and eye rolls. Ready, he asked. Not remotely, she replied, just as the cameras exploded in a staccato burst of light. Mr. Wren, the reporter called. Is it true you're dating an up-and-coming artist? How'd you two meet? We had a rather caffeinated collision, August answered smoothly, his arm tightening around Isla's waist. She dumped coffee on his car. She added with a mock-sweet smile, and honestly, he had it coming. The crowd laughed, charmed by her candor. Isla could feel the warmth of August's glance as they made their way inside. He was different here, in the crowd under the spotlight. All charm and effortless poise, a polished version of the man she'd glimpsed behind closed doors. The crowd parted for him like water around a stone. Politicians, tech titans, fashion icons, he knew them all. And every time someone else approached his hand, found the small of Isla's back, as if grounding himself to her presence. August Wren, with a girlfriend. A voice cooed, nearby sharp with faux amusement. I never thought I'd see the day. They turned to find a tall blonde in a red dress that dared you to look away. Her smile was all teeth. Cassandra, August said, his voice cooling several degrees. Didn't know you were back from Europe. Cassandra's gaze slid over Isla with lazy disinterest. Clearly I am. Aren't you going to introduce us? He shifted slightly protectively. Cassandra Wells meet Isla. Marin, my girlfriend. The way he said friend, with such deliberate pause, didn't go unnoticed. Cassandra's lips curved, but the warmth never reached her eyes, charmed. So, you're the new flavor. How refreshing that August is experimenting. Isla, to her own surprise, didn't bristle. She smiled, slow, deliberate, and entirely unbothered. Actually, she said sweetly, we've been simmering for quite some time. But thank you for your curiosity. August's jaw twitched. Was that amusement? Cassandra blinked just once and then turned her gaze elsewhere. But Isla had seen it the crack in the porcelain mask. As the trio drifted apart, August leaned closer, his voice barely audible. You handled her. I wasn't aware I needed to. He looked at her like he was seeing her again for the first time. Remind me never to underestimate you. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Tonight wasn't just a performance, not anymore. Time bends in strange ways when you're pretending to be in love, especially when it starts to feel dangerously close to the real thing. On impulse, Isla turned to August, lifting her hand to his cheek. Without thinking, without planning, she kissed him. It was nothing like the rehearsed pecks they'd practiced before. This one was unguarded, lingering tender, intimate in a way that made her heart thrum wildly in her chest. When she pulled back, his eyes, usually cool and unreadable, held something that made her breath catch. If you'll excuse us, Isla said smoothly, to a stunned Cassandra. I believe they're about to announce dinner. As they turned to walk away, August leaned in, his voice low and a little rough. That was unexpected. Too much, she asked, doubt creeping in. He shook his head, a faint smile curving his lips. No, just perfect. Dinner was a dazzling parade of silver and crystal, each course a culinary masterpiece. Isla found herself seated between August and the city's mayor, making conversation feel like walking a tightrope in heels. But years of pitching her work to distracted collectors had trained her well. She smiled, engaged and deflected with grace. Halfway through the main course, August's phone buzzed quietly. He glanced down, and something shifted in his expression, dark tight, unreadable. What is it? Ela whispered. Grandfather, he murmured. He's here. What? Her fork froze midair. I thought he was supposed to stay home. So did his doctors. Before she could react, a deep, commanding voice sliced through the room like a blade. August Charleston Wren stood at the entrance, leaning on an ornate cane, but exuding a force of presence that made the entire table sit a little straighter. Even the mayor's smile faltered. Grandfather, August said, standing quickly. You shouldn't be here. My health is my own concern. Charleston cut him off with a dismissive wave, already turning toward Isla. Miss Marin, you are radiant tonight. I trust my grandson understands the value of what he's found. He does, Isla said, rising with a calmness she didn't feel. Though I must say, your delivery is much more poetic. A flicker, just a flicker of amusement crossed Charleston's weathered face. May I borrow you for a dance, if my grandson can spare you? Isla glanced at August. He gave a terse nod. Jaw tight, she took Charleston's arm. To her surprise, he moved with ease, his steps deliberate and smooth, as though he'd rehearsed this moment. Around them, the gala whirled in gold and champagne, but his eyes were fixed solely on her. You've stirred the room tonight, he said quietly. People are wondering where August found you. Beneath his car, technically, Isla replied. Lips twitching, Charleston let out a low chuckle. You've got fire. I admire that. His tone shifted. But do you have endurance? Do you understand what it means to walk beside a wren, not just bask in the spotlight, but withstand the storm? With all due respect, Isla said, voice steady, I don't need to prove anything to you or to the guests in this room. The only one I care about impressing is your grandson. Is that so? He arched a brow. Then why did you look at him before you agreed to dance with me? A woman in love wouldn't need permission. Isla's spine stiffened. It's not permission, she said coldly. It's respect. Charleston's eyes gleamed. No, it's performance. The question is, Miss Marin, who are you performing for, him or yourself? Before Isla could respond, August appeared at her side, cutting in with flawless timing. The song's over. Grandfather, he said, I'd like my date back. Charleston released her hand with a knowing smile. Of course, we were merely getting acquainted. August slid an arm around Isla's waist and guided her back onto the dance floor, their bodies falling into step without thought. His voice was low but sharp. What did he say to you? Isla hesitated. He's not convinced. He thinks I'm using you for your money or for access. Well, August's jaw clenched, his hand tightening slightly at her back. This isn't working. She looked up at him, surprised. What do you mean? He's digging harder than ever, watching our every move. His gaze met hers. And if this is going to hold, we can't just pretend anymore. There was a pause, the air between them thick with questions. Neither of them was quite ready to answer, because maybe, just maybe, the pretending had already stopped. Maybe we should just come clean, Isla said, quietly, her voice barely rising above the music as they drifted to a quieter corner of the ballroom. This lie is growing heavier by the day. August turned to her, his jaw tight. No. If he learns the truth, he'll do exactly what he's threatened. He'll hand everything to Victor, and that would be the end of Wren Holdings as we know it. Thousands of jobs, lives all gone. His words carried the weight of far more than pride. For the first time, Isla saw it, the man behind the empire, not carved from privilege, but carrying it like a shield to protect everything and everyone beneath it. Then we don't falter, she said softly. We get better. Their eyes locked. No act. No performance. Just silent understanding. A microphone crackled. Charleston Wren's voice echoed across the marble floors of the gala hall. May I have your attention, ladies and gentlemen? August stiffened beside her. What is he doing? Charleston stepped into the spotlight, one hand curled over a cane, the other holding a champagne flute like a king delivering his verdict. As you all know, the Wren Foundation Gala has a long-standing tradition of surprises. Tonight, I'm pleased to continue that legacy with something very dear to my heart. August's breath hitched. In honor of my grandson's recent romantic revelation, Charleston said dryly, we'll be launching a month-long art exhibition featuring the work of none other than Miss Isla Marin. Isla froze. The show will open in 30 days. Charleston continued, showcasing Miss Marin's interpretation of wealth, legacy, and he paused, his eyes locking on hers, love. The crowd erupted into applause. Spotlights found Isla and August. Her throat tightened. Around her, the sea of elite faces blurred into static. I don't have enough work, she whispered. Not for an entire exhibition. Not in 30 days. That's the point, August said darkly. He's laying a trap. If you fail, it proves you're not who you claim to be, that you're using me, and that our relationship is a facade. Across the room, Charleston raised his glass toward her. His expression was calm. Calculated, prove me wrong, it said. Without words, the applause still rang in her ears when August turned to her and without hesitation kissed her. But this wasn't for the cameras. This wasn't rehearsed. It was deep and unguarded. The kind of kiss that left Isla breathless and unsure whether she was still pretending. The world fell silent around them until a familiar voice sliced through. Well, bravo. You two are really committing to the performance. Cassandra stood beside a tall man with sharp features and cool charm that looked alarmingly familiar. Victor August greeted stiffly. Didn't know you were back. I wouldn't miss this circus for anything, Victor said, his smile polished, but hollow. Charleston insisted I be here. Family unity and all that. He extended a hand to Isla, but his eyes never left August. So this is the artist who's stolen your heart. Before she could respond, Victor added, Cassandra's been filling me in. Fascinating developments, really. They walked off arm in arm, leaving a cold silence behind. That's your cousin Isla asked, still gripping August's sleeve. The same, August replied. His voice clipped. And if he's aligned with Cassandra, we're not just trying to convince my grandfather anymore. We're at war. 3 weeks later, the East Wing of Wren Manor, once silent and ceremonial, had become a chaotic burst of creativity. Easels leaned against marble columns. Paint splattered onto tapestries worth more than Isla's annual income. The scent of oil, paint, ink, and late-night coffee filled the air. She was everywhere, curating, painting, sketching until dawn. Staff walked softly through the chaos, like museum guards among a living installation. And somewhere, between performance and pressure, Isla began to wonder. What if the love they were faking had become something real? "You haven't slept in 2 days," August said from the doorway, his voice laced with concern. Isla brush clenched between her teeth, and arms elbow deep in oil pigments, didn't look up. Her hair was a wild halo of curls, streaked with accidental blue, and the sleeve of her overalls bore the smudged signature of her work in progress. She muttered something unintelligible before accepting the steaming mug in his hand. Ethiopian roast. Of course he remembered. The showcase opens in a week, she mumbled after a sip. I still have 3 canvases to finish. You're going to burn out, August warned gently. Even I don't push this hard, and that's saying something. Diana once threatened a corporate mutiny over my work hours. The last few weeks had shifted something invisible but irreversible between them. What began as rehearsed affection had blurred into something softer, effortless. Touches, kisses, not dictated by necessity, but by habit. And habit had a way of becoming something deeper. Neither of them spoke about it, but neither of them stopped either. I have to get this right, Isla said, putting the coffee down beside her easel. People already assume I'm only getting this exhibition because of you. If my work doesn't stand on its own, they'll be wrong, August said firmly, stepping beside her. The painting in front of them was unlike anything Isla had shared with the world before. It wasn't a soft cityscape or dreamy skyline. It was raw, 2 abstract figures silhouetted in midnight tones stretched toward each other across a swirling void, close but not quite touching. August stared at it for a long moment. This is different from your usual pieces. Everything is different now, Isla said, quietly, her eyes not leaving the canvas. A knock at the studio door pulled them from the moment. Mrs. Everhart appeared slightly breathless, her usual elegance dulled by urgency. Mr. Wren, she said, your grandfather is here, without warning. He's in the main parlor. August's expression hardened. Did he say why? No, sir, but he brought Mr. Victor. And Miss Langford. Isla and August exchanged a look, half bracing, half disbelief. We'll be there in a minute, August said. As Mrs. Everhart disappeared, Isla turned toward the mirror, reaching to swipe at the paint streaks on her face. I need to change. No. August caught her hands, stopping her gently. This is you. Let him see that. She hesitated, then nodded. They entered the parlor, side by side. Charleston Wren was seated in a high-backed chair, like a monarch holding court. His eyes scanned Isla from head to toe, smudged cheeks, stained overalls, hair in a messy knot. Victor lounged nearby, one leg crossed over the other, the picture of smug entitlement. Cassandra Langford was running her fingers over an antique vase, with the hunger of a woman eyeing her next conquest. Grandfather, August said with forced civility, this is a surprise. The best inspections always are, Charleston replied, eyes still locked on Isla. I see, we've interrupted creativity. She's been working non-stop for the showcase, August said, something protective creeping into his voice. How passionate, Cassandra murmured, lips curling, though one does wonder if the passion is for the art or the spectacle. Isla flushed, but before she could respond, August's fingers found hers, grounding firm. Victor stood smoothing an imaginary wrinkle in his designer blazer. Actually, we came with an offer, one I believe you'll find quite generous. Charleston nodded, gesturing toward his great-nephew. Go ahead, Victor. Let's hear your brilliant plan. And just like that, the room stilled. Isla's instincts prickled. Whatever Victor was about to say, it wasn't goodwill. Victor drew a crisp, white envelope from the inside pocket of his tailored jacket and placed it on the table. Between them, like a loaded weapon. $5 million, Ms. Merrick, he said coolly. In exchange for ending this charade with my cousin and admitting that none of it was ever real, the room went silent. August's voice, when it came, was low and lethal. What did you just say? Let's not insult anyone's intelligence, Charleston interjected, folding his hands on his cane. You orchestrated this arrangement to preserve your place in the company. Miss Merrick agreed to help you in exchange for protection housing, and let's be honest, a substantial boost to her artistic career. That's a lie, August snapped, though Isla could feel the tension vibrating in the way he gripped her hand. Is it? Charleston tilted his head, all challenge and calculation. Perhaps we should ask your security team about the contract you drafted the day before she moved into the lake house, or about your conveniently separate living quarters at the start. Isla's stomach dropped. He knew, somehow he knew everything. Victor slid the envelope further forward like a final temptation. It's more than twice what he promised you. All you need to do is admit the truth. Everyone turned to Isla. Charleston's stare was sharp, waiting for her to crumble. To take the money, to prove him right, she inhaled slowly. No, she said clearly. A flicker of surprise crossed Charleston's face. I don't want your money, Isla continued, lifting her chin. Yes, August and I started with an agreement. I was desperate. He offered me stability, and I gave him a way to protect what he's built. But something happened in the weeks that followed, something neither of us planned. She turned toward August, then back to Charleston. I watched him stay up night after night to save a department because he refused to let people lose their jobs. I saw the way he remembers everyone's name, from the head chef to the newest groundskeeper. I've seen him, angry, exhausted, vulnerable, human. Her voice softened. He keeps Ethiopian roast stocked in the kitchen, even though he hates it, just because it's my favorite. He orders art supplies that match my style better than I do. He listens when I talk about brush technique and lighting, even when I can tell it bores him. She looked at Charleston with quiet fire in her eyes. This may have started with a contract, but what exists between us now can't be written on paper, and I won't deny that. For the first time since she'd met him, Charleston Wren looked genuinely at a loss for words. Well, Cassandra's voice sliced through the silence. That was poetic, but legally meaningless. The relationship started under false pretenses, which makes everything else irrelevant. Does it? Charleston said slowly, his gaze never leaving Isla. I wonder. He turned to his grandson. And what about you, August? Do you stand behind her words? August was quiet for a moment, visibly battling something inside himself. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. She's right, every word, yes. It started as an act, but it stopped being one long ago. He stepped closer to Isla. His eyes locked on hers. Somewhere between our first clash and this moment, I fell in love with you. Gasps rippled softly from around the room, but August didn't seem to notice. I love you, he said, again this time, like he was hearing it for the first time himself. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But I do. Isla's eyes filled with tears. August. Oh, come on, Victor scoffed. This is laughable. But neither of them heard him anymore, because in that moment, under the scrutiny of power and pride, what had once been a performance had become something neither of them could deny, and the truth had finally spoken for itself. You expect us to just believe this fairy tale, Victor sneered. Enough. Charleston's voice cut through the room like thunder. All eyes turned as the patriarch rose from his seat, his posture straighter, more commanding than it had been in weeks. He approached Isla with deliberate steps. You refused $5 million, he said quietly. Why? Isla looked him in the eye. Because I love him, she said, her voice steady. And love, real love, can't be bought. Charleston studied her, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. Then slowly a smile softened the lines of his stern face. Well done, Miss Merrick. Exceptionally done. He turned now, facing Victor, and Cassandra. "You may leave," he said. "Your presence is no longer necessary." What Victor stepped forward, disbelief written all over him. "Uncle, you can't be serious." Charleston's tone sharpened. "What I believe is that you and Mrs. Wells have displayed exactly the kind of greed I've spent a lifetime learning to sniff out before it infects everything." Victor paled. "I never said." "You didn't need to," Charleston snapped. "Did you think I didn't know about your plan to strip the company for parts the moment it became yours?" Cassandra looked away, stone-faced. Charleston turned back to August, withdrawing an envelope from inside his coat and holding it out. "In here is the full transfer of controlling interest in Wren and Vale Enterprises. No more conditions, no more tests." August hesitated, stunned. So, this was never about the inheritance being at risk. Of course it wasn't, Charleston said, unapologetic. "I needed to be certain about her, and about you, whether you could see past bottom lines and balance sheets to what truly matters." He looked between them. "Now," something softer in his voice, "and you did." Then gently, his gaze lingered on his grandson. "Your parents would be proud of the man you've become." And just like that, the storm that had loomed for weeks, perhaps years, began to clear. When Charleston finally left the room, silence filled the space he'd occupied. "So," Isla said at last, still catching her breath, "that just happened." A low, stunned laugh escaped August's lips. "We were masterfully manipulated by my grandfather." "Were we?" Isla asked quietly. "Or did he just give us the chance to see what was already there?" Their eyes locked, and there was no script left to follow. Only the truth. "Did you mean it?" August asked, vulnerability breaking through the last of his defenses. "What you said, that you love me." Isla nodded slowly. "Did you mean it when you said it to me?" August didn't answer with words. Instead, he closed the space between them, cupping her face in his hands and kissing her deeply, honestly, with nothing held back. When they finally broke apart, he whispered against her lips, "I love you. No contracts. No pretending. Just you." 1 year later, the newly opened Merrick Arts Collective was alive with laughter, music, and the vibrant energy of creativity. Canvases lined the whitewashed walls. Sculptures caught the warm gallery lights. It was the space Isla had once only dreamed of, now a reality shared with others, just like her. She moved through the crowd, greeting artists and guests, a quiet pride shining in her eyes. Her wedding ring, elegant, simple, often streaked with paint, glinted under the lights. Behind her, August appeared, slipping an arm around her waist, ready to head home. "Mrs. Wren, almost," Isla replied, taking a final look around the space. "I just wanted to feel it one last time," and she smiled softly. "It feels real." August leaned in, brushing a kiss to her temple. "Because it is." "I just need to check on one more thing," Isla said, softly, stepping into the quietest corner of the gallery. There, bathed in soft lighting, hung the painting that had shifted everything. Two figures, silhouetted in charcoal, and stormlight still reaching for one another across a turbulent sky, but beside it now, a second canvas told the rest of the story. The same figures this time, hand in hand, the chaos behind them had melted into the first light of morning. A sunrise not just painted, but felt. August slipped his arms around her waist from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" he murmured. "Leaving your quiet life for all this complication?" Isla turned in his embrace, her smile tender. "Do you ever regret trading your solitude for a wife who gets paint on your shirts and debates boardroom ethics before you've had your first cup of coffee?" "Not even for a second," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Then we're even," she whispered back, her voice laced with laughter and something deeper. "Best contract I've ever signed." In the hallway outside, Harrison waited beside the car, hands clasped behind his back. Through the tall windows, he glimpsed the couple silhouetted against the gallery lights, lost in each other, unaware of the world watching. He smiled to himself, not the reserved smile of an employee, but something softer, something like pride. Because some stories begin with chaos, with a near collision and a spilled coffee, with misunderstandings and contracts, guarded hearts, and impossible expectations. But the stories, at a last, they grow in the quiet moments, the ones no one else sees, the shared sunrises, the late-night conversations, the willingness to show up again and again, even when it's hard. Isla and August didn't just find love. They chose it. They built it, not in perfection, but in presence. And that, after all, was the real masterpiece. Thank you, truly, for being here. For listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart. The story wasn't just about love found, it was about love chosen, about two people learning that sometimes the most unexpected moments lead us exactly where we're meant to be. If this journey stirred something in you, hope, healing, a smile, or maybe even a tear, then we've shared something beautiful. And that's the magic of stories. They remind us that even in the chaos, even when the path looks uncertain, something real and lasting can still bloom. Thank you for being a part of that magic with us. Until the next story, take care of your heart and remember some of the best beginnings come disguised as endings, with love, shining stories.